The New Year Protocol series is this brainchild of mine, a crazy idea I've had for the longest time. From a very young age, I was attracted to not only music, but also movies and the film industry and visuals and animations and how they're used for narrative purposes. Now, I don't have as much of a background in the visual aspect as I do music, if at all. And as such, my experience working with 3D software and compositing has always been pretty limited and not always on par with the music. So I'd often have this really nice track that I was very proud of, but then I wouldn't be able to do it justice in the video. I'd have certain ideas in my head that I just wasn't able to fully realize. For the first few chapters, I found myself relying heavily on third-party loops and all these pre-made things to kind of support the audio rhythmically more than anything. Since it's electronic music, the drum pattern is very defined, very mechanical, so often syncing up a few loops or adding shake or flash effects to the beat would just do the trick. And then New Year Protocol 9 arrives and all of that goes straight out the window, because after years of build-up, the series is going full orchestral, and in orchestral music, the concept of flow and rhythm works fundamentally differently compared to, say, dubstep or house or downtempo. Suddenly, that didn't work anymore, and the video had to tell the same story as the audio with the same level of fidelity. I needed a major leap forward. I wrote down a very rudimentary list of all the things I wanted to do in the video, shot for shot, basically storyboarding the whole thing. And when I was done, I looked at it and I remembered I barely know how to do any of this stuff, and it has to be done before January. It sounded frankly impossible. I was heavily tempted several times to just outsource the animation and leave it in someone else's hands. But then I thought to myself, this is not who you are. If you do this, you run the risk of receiving a product you don't like, or a product that doesn't fit the series or the Modus brand, and you're not gonna learn anything anyway. So I tried to identify what the main issue was. What about this chapter was so radically different that it made it such a bigger commitment? And unlike the other characters in the series, which are built using fairly basic shapes, now I had a human model that had to move in accordance with a certain rule set, the human anatomy rule set. I needed a rig. I had no effing clue how to rig, and I kinda still don't. Throughout the start of 2023, while I was still producing the song, I began to do some research on the weekends, late at night, any off time I could find really. I needed to find tools that were simple enough for me to learn in a short time and that I could use to automate or even skip the more tedious parts of the process, so I could focus on telling the story I wanted to tell. So things like an automatic rigger, where I'd give it some reference points, like where the limbs and the spine and the head were, and it would generate a working rig on my existing model, and then assistive AI to help me animate by estimating motion, giving a few key poses or moments, calculating the center of mass, and having movements from, say, a wrist trickle down the rest of the arm, which would make it look far more realistic and accurate than a fully manual process where I could inadvertently run into a pose that was physically impossible. And once I found those tools and added them to my workflow, suddenly tasks that would have taken me entire days were now done in a few minutes. Within like 3 to 4 weeks, I had a working rig and convincing enough animations on this humanoid that were ready to export to the rendering engine. So all I had to worry about now was to set up the lighting and the camera angles. It saved a tremendous amount of time that I could now use to just focus on what mattered, which was being creative. For the rendering, I came up with a pipeline that I first tried out as a pilot in the animation for New Year Protocol 8, and that was to use upscaling to bring the series to 4K. With NYP8, both the renders and the edit were at 1080p with a single upscale process to 4K at the end, but with 9, there's a lot more shots. We're talking like 80 to 90 separate scenes, so even 1080p would have taken too long on the render that I'm using. So I took it a step further and I added a second upscale process to the pipeline. I first render all the source assets at just 540p, then I 2x that to 1440p, which then goes on a 1080p timeline. This excess in resolution means I can reframe things around when needed without losing quality, and then once the final video was done, the second upscaler would take it from 1080p to that final 4K export. And I was very surprised to see just how well this style of graphics suited the technique and how sharp it turned out. And then the last step, my favorite part of the whole process, the pieces of the puzzle are all there, the assets are rendered, it's time for the post-processing, all the eye candy that goes on top, laser beams, the particles, the energy force fields, the color calibration. Let's complete this scene and bring it to life. Make it so you could pause at any given moment, any frame, and that could be your next wallpaper. Every day I sat down and I worked on this, and I just couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. I thought to myself, you're David trying to slay Goliath here. But then again, that's kind of what New Year Protocol itself is, right? At its core, it's a David versus Goliath story, overcoming the odds when they're all stacked against you. So it was only fitting for me to go through that same journey the humans are going through in the story on a personal level. And not only was I successful, but it was done in record time. Once all was said and done, including the countdown climax, which is its own kind of worms, the entire project was completed 2 months ahead of schedule. It's a testament to how fast the technology is improving, and I don't think this would have been possible at all just a couple years ago. I guess it shows that if you're motivated enough and you set yourself a goal and you find the right tools for it and work towards it every day, no matter how ambitious that goal might seem or how limited your knowledge on the field might be at first, you will learn and you will get there.